Hey guys, so for today's video, we'll be looking at how you can calculate percentages in Excel. So calculations such as percent of totals, variance to budget, and running totals are the cornerstone of any basic business analysis. So in this video, we'll explore some examples of formulas that will help with these types of analysis. And the first one that we'll talk about is calculating the percent of goal. So when someone asks you to calculate a percent of goal, they are simply asking you to compare the actual performance against a stated goal. The math involved in this calculation is simple. You simply divide the actual by the goal, and this will give you a percentage value that represents how much of the goal has been achieved. So for example, if your goal was to sell 100 pence, but you actually sold 80 pence, your percentage of goal will be 80%. So in case you're wondering how I got this, since the percentage of goal is equal to the actual over the goal, so you'll take 80 over 100, which will give you 0.8 or 80% when it is multiplied by 100. So we're going to look at a real-world example of where this can be applied. So in this sheet, you're going to calculate the percent of goal. So when you look at column D, we have the actual revenue, and in column C is the goal that you wanted to attain. So when you look at column E, there are some regions which have attained the goal and some which have not. So to calculate the percent of goal, we'll take the actual, which is in column D, divided by the goal, which is in column C. So when you look at column F, you can see the formula D5 over C5, which is the actual over the goal. And then you can also calculate the percent of a common goal. Sometimes you can have a goal which is common for everyone to attain. So for example, in this sheet, all the regions, north, south, east, and west, they are supposed to attain a common goal of 700,000 sales. So to get the percent of goal, we'll take the actual, which is in column C, for the north region, and then you divide by the common goal. But since the common goal is same for all the regions, you have to make it an absolute so that when you copy the formula down, it gives you the correct values. So when you come here to the next thing we're going to look at is the percent variance. So a variance is an indicator of the difference between one number and another. Say for example, on Tuesday you sold 100 pence, and then on Wednesday you sold 150 pence. So the variance will be a positive 50. So the percent variance is essentially the percentage difference between the benchmark number, which was 100, and the new number, which is 150. So you calculate the percent variance by subtracting the benchmark number from the new number, and then you divide the result by the benchmark number. So for example, it will be 150 minus 100, then the result of that will be divided by 100. But an alternative formula for calculating this is simply dividing the new number by the benchmark number, and then you subtract 1. So we'll look at an example. So to calculate the percent variance using the first formula, we'll look at the current year, the sales for the current year, and those of the prior year. So to calculate the percentage variance between the 2 years, we'll take D4 divided by D4 minus C4, and then we divide by C4, as you can see on the formula that is here on the side, and then we'll get 9%. So when you copy the formula down, it does the same for all the 4 regions. And then for our next example, we are calculating the percent variance using the formula where you divide the new number and the benchmark number, and then you subtract 1, which will give you the same result. So here we'll look at column D. We'll take the sales for the current year. Say for the north region, which is D4, you divide by C4, and then you subtract 1, and it will give you the same values as that of the previous sheet when you copy them down. And then next up, we're going to look at calculating percent variance with negative values. So in the previous section, we saw how you can calculate a percentage variance, and this works well in most cases. However, when the benchmark value is 0 or less, the formula usually might bring some errors. So, for example, you imagine you're starting a business and expect to take a loss during the first year. So you give yourself a budget of negative $10,000. But then after that, you actually made money and you earned $15,000. So calculating the percent variance between your actual revenue and the budgeted revenue will give you a negative 250%. So if you want, you can calculate it. So you can't actually say that your percent variance is a negative 250% when you clearly made money. So the problem is that when a benchmark value is a negative number, the math inverts the results, causing the numbers to look a little shaky. So, and this is a real problem in the corporate world, where budgets can often be negative values. So, in order to fix this, we can leverage the absolute function to negate the negative benchmark value. So Excel's absolute function returns the absolute value for any number you pass to it. For example, entering absolute and then negative 100 into cell A1 will return 100. So essentially what the absolute function does, it makes any number a non-negative number. So we are going to look at the absolute function in action. So in column D, you can see this is the standard percent variance. If you calculate the percent variance using the budget as a negative number, you'll get a negative 250%. But when you use the absolute function, you'll get an improved percent variance of 250%. So to use this function, we'll take the cell C4, which is the actual, minus the budget that had been planned for, and then when you're dividing by the budget, you'll wrap it in the absolute function so that it does not give you a negative value. Yeah, so you can refer to this formula here, which is the same one that was entered in column E. And then next, we're going to look at percent distribution, and this is a measure of how a metric such as a total revenue is distributed among the component parts that make up the total. So this calculation is relatively simple. You divide each component by the part by the total. So an extra tip is that you don't have to dedicate a separate cell to an actual total value. You can simply calculate the total on the fly within the percent distribution formula using the sum function. So we'll look at an example of how to do this. When you look at this sheet, there's the 4 regions: north, south, east, and west. Now the total has been given a dedicated cell, which is cell C10. So to calculate the percentage distribution, we'll take the revenue, which is in column C. For the north region, we'll take cell C4, and then we divide by the total, which is cell C10. And since this is a constant, it will not change. We'll always refer to this same cell. We have to make it absolute so that when you're copying the formula down, it gives you the correct values. Then, to calculate the percent distribution with sum function, we'll select column C, which has the revenue, and then for the north region, we'll take cell C4 divided by the sum of all the regions that are present at that particular moment. So the range that will be in the sum function, it has to be absolute because that range will not change, it will remain constant. And also this will avoid any errors when you copy the formula down. So it will be C4 divided by the sum of all the 4 regions. So in this case, we do not have a dedicated cell that has the total value like in the previous example. Yeah, so if you enjoyed watching this video or you learned something new, don't forget to like this video and to subscribe and to share, and I'll see you guys in the next video.